Hello there, my name is Curtis, and in this video I'm going to be talking about how I overcame my bipolar mania and depression. This video is probably going to be mostly for people who are searching for bipolar disorder and depression and have not necessarily watched my previous videos. I talked about this in some of my previous videos, but I'm just going to be starting, I guess, for new people in this video. So, long story short, is I used to have severe bipolar mania and severe suicidal depression, basically for my whole life. And in this video, I'm not going to be reading notes. I'm just going to be kind of talking off the top of my head. But yeah, I used to suffer from severe bipolar mania and severe depression. For as long as I can remember. I can remember literally being in 3rd grade and being suicidal. And back then I didn't know like what, those emotions were. I didn't know that it was something like a disorder or whatever. I just, felt terrible, and I would always be crying and, fantasize. It's called suicidal ideation. You fantasize about, oh, maybe I should kill myself or something like that. And so I had horrible depression my whole life, and I also had bipolar mania. And I had pretty much the most severe type of bipolar mania, which is called ultradian rapid cycling, which basically means that I would have sometimes multiple manic sessions in a single day, which, apparently I've read online, some people have like light mania that happens over the course of like a week or something. You're in like an elevated mood for like a week or two at a time. Well, that was not what I had. I had very severe, sort of like bursts of mania. Like I would just be, normal, and then something would happen to like maybe set me off. Like I'd hear a song on the radio or whatever, and I would just get into this manic mood. I would be all jumpy and frantic, kind of, and the irrational confidence and stuff like that. Anyways, I suffered from severe depression and mania for my whole life. And then in college, I kind of figured out that something was wrong with me. I eventually diagnosed myself with bipolar mania and depression. And then eventually, a few years later, I actually went to a psychiatrist and I told him all my symptoms and stuff, and he agreed with the diagnosis. And eventually, I got onto 2 different things. I got onto lithium for the mania, and escitalopram, which is an antidepressant for the depression. Escitalopram worked great for my depression while I was on it. It totally got rid of like 99% of my depression. And the lithium, I was taking a non-prescription lithium. Yes, that actually exists. It's called lithium orotate. It's it's a different molecular structure than what's usually prescribed. And so, because of the sorry, I can't say that. Because of the molecular structure, it can be taken in lower doses than normal prescription doses, and still be effective. And so, yeah, eventually, after many years of suffering, I was around 24, 25 when I found lithium. Then about a year later, I got on the antidepressants. But the lithium worked great. It got rid of pretty much all my mania. And the antidepressants worked great. It got rid of pretty much all my antidepressants. But the problem was I was still on these pills for a couple years. And anytime I would forget to take a pill for like a day or two, or I would get lazy and not take it or whatever, the symptoms would come back, both the mania and the depression. So the problem was not cured by the pills, it was just treated. And even though the treatment was working well, I was kind of disappointed that, I didn't want to. I was disappointed that I thought in my mind, oh, I have to take these pills for the rest of my life, which thankfully I was buying them cheaply, but still, it was adding up. And, anyways, not very long ago, like, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago, I did some work with a spiritual counselor. Not a normal therapist, but a spiritual counselor, and he was working with me to identify negative beliefs in my mind and negative emotions, and to help surrender them. And basically, I talk about this a lot, the process of it, in my previous videos on alphabet calibration. If you want to watch my old videos, you can do that. But basically, you identify a negative belief or a negative emotion within your mind, and then you choose to let it go. And I was working with this therapist, and he was guiding me in this process, or a spiritual counselor. He's not a licensed therapist. But during the process of working with him for a couple weeks, my mania disappeared. There's kind of a weird thing that happened that I won't get into, but basically I became aware that my mania was gone. And I said, I'm going to test this out. You know, I feel like my mania is gone. I'm going to test this out. I'm going to stop taking my lithium for... I actually said, I'm going to stop taking my lithium for 30 days and see if the mania comes back. And I stopped taking it, and it never came back. And I was like, oh, this is weird. I said, maybe if I start and stop again, like, I just want to make sure. So I took it again for like a month and then stopped again. And it just never came back. The mania never came back. And it turns out that the mania was cured in my sessions with this spiritual counselor as a result of removing negativity from my mind. And then months later, I was doing the process myself of removing negativity from my mind. And I wasn't even trying to work on the depression. I was just working on whatever came up next. And just out of nowhere, I had this awareness that my depression felt like it was cured. And it was just like a knowingness, you know, like people you might ask, like, how did you know? Well, it's just like, you know, how do you know you're hungry? You feel it. Well, I just had this feeling in my head. You know, how do you know you have a headache? You have a feeling in your head. Well, I had this feeling that my depression was gone. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try stopping my antidepressants, and I'm going to see if the depression comes back. And I stopped my antidepressants, and for about 3 days, I was moody, not depressed, but I was like agitated. But after a couple of days, I readjusted, and the depression never came back. And so as it turns out, what was happening all those years is that for most of my life, until I worked with this counselor in the mania one way, I literally thought that my mania and my depression were genetically caused. I thought, this is part of my body. I can never get over it. I'm going to have to be taking these pills for the rest of my life. But it turns out that wasn't true. And it turns out that I've since discovered that many illnesses are caused entirely by negativity held in your mind that is repressed into your subconscious mind. And basically, repression just means that, you know, maybe you had a bad feeling a long time ago, and you just pushed it out of your awareness instead of surrendering it properly. And now it's eating away at you in the background of your mind. And yeah, what I've discovered is that many negative health conditions are the result of basically when you hold a negative emotion or belief in your head, it's almost like you're punishing yourself. It's almost like the body reflects what is held in the mind. The physical is the result of the mental, you know, process. And this makes, you know, this isn't that crazy of an idea. I know some people will be like, oh, that doesn't make sense. But it's really not that crazy of an idea when you consider that there's many examples of like hypnotists will hypnotize someone and they'll tell them that like, oh, you are allergic to flowers. And then they show them a bouquet of flowers and they start sneezing. And then they hypnotize them later and say, you are no longer allergic, and they don't sneeze anymore. So there's actually examples of that, you know, from real like hypnosis therapists and stuff. So there's like real, maybe not necessarily scientific evidence of that, but definitely other people have observed that your beliefs can cause health problems. And changing your beliefs can cure some health problems. Maybe not all, but many. And I go over the exact process of how I did this in my previous videos, but in this video I just want to reach out to people who aren't exactly into all the weird spiritual stuff that I'm into. And I just want to tell you that mania and depression can, in many cases, be cured by relieving your unconscious mind of its negativity. And I have a recommendation for people who are not really well versed in spirituality and the stuff that I'm into, which I explained in my previous videos. There is one method I recommend that anyone can use. Actually, there's two. I'll tell you two. The first one is just called the letting go method, which some people have called the releasing method, or the Sedona method, or the whatever method. There's several names for it. Some people call it mindfulness, but basically you just focus on a problem, such as your mania or depression or whatever, and then you just let the feeling, let whatever feeling comes up, you just let it be within you without disturbing it, and you don't resist it. And you just let it come up, and you actually welcome it. There's a process as part of the Sedona method called the welcoming method, where you basically just said, you say, can I welcome this feeling? And so if you feel depressed, you welcome the feeling of depression, and if you feel manic, you welcome the feeling of mania. And you also welcome all the negative emotions that arise around that, such as fear. You say, oh, what if, if you might be afraid of, like, oh, if I welcome this depression, won't it get worse? I'm afraid of that. You're anxious about that, whatever. You welcome all the feelings that come up about it. And if you devote yourself to this welcoming technique, which is also kind of the same as the letting go technique, you just welcome all the negative emotions and you release them as they come up. You don't resist them, you just let them be experienced fully in your mind. If you do this in a dedicated manner, you can have very good results. This is actually, this video isn't about my anxiety disorder, but I used to have an anxiety disorder, and I used the letting go method to cure my anxiety disorder completely. And that's what my first YouTube video is about, if you want to go watch it. But I think this method, I did not use exactly this method for my depression and mania. I used something different, which is in my alphabet calibration videos. But basically, this method would probably be very effective for someone that can't do the calibration that I talk about in those videos. So I recommend the Sedona method and the welcoming technique. All you do is you welcome negative emotions as they come up. You welcome unpleasant feelings as they come up. And the thing is, as you welcome them, as you don't resist them, they fade away. And it basically relieves the negativity in your subconscious mind. Basically what it is you're welcoming the negativity that's stored in your subconscious mind, and you're allowing it to unrepress and come up into your conscious mind like a flower sprouting out of the ground. And as you let go of it and as you don't resist it, it is sort of released out of your mind. And basically you have the idea of, I'm going to surrender this. It's sort of like a mental posture of surrender. Like, I'm going to let go of all my resistance to my negativity. I'm just going to let it be, and I'm going to let it go. So that's the first technique that I would recommend to people with depression and mania and with any problem actually, is the welcoming technique. I've been using it lately for more like fear and stuff, not anxiety disorders, but just fear in general. It's great. The welcoming technique is like super, super awesome. All you do is you welcome negative feelings. That's it. And you keep it coming up within you, and eventually it runs out. It's crazy how it works, but it's awesome. The next technique, which I really recommend, which is awesome, is it's something that's, well, it's called optimal EFT. It's made by the guy who made emotional freedom techniques, the original thing where you tap on like acupuncture points on your body like that. Well, he invented something called optimal EFT, which is totally different. And I'm not exactly sure how he does it. I only read through his instructions like one time, a long time ago. But I've been using something very similar myself. And all you do is you're basically praying and surrendering to a higher power, or if you don't like the idea of a higher power, you can just ask your subconscious mind as your higher power. And all you do is, what I do is I lay down on my bed and I relax and I think of a problem I have, and I say, Dear God, please remove from my subconscious mind the beliefs and the negative emotions that are contributing to this problem. And basically what you're doing is you're praying and you're asking God for help, but you're also surrendering to the higher power. Or, like I said, you can ask your subconscious mind. You can say, subconscious mind, please release the negative emotions and negative beliefs that I am holding on to, that I'm not aware of, but that are contributing to this problem I have. And I've used this a couple times now, and it's very effective. I actually used it twice, 2 times when I was sick with a cold. The first time I got sick from I don't even know what. I got sick from something, and it was like I don't know, like day 3 of the illness, and it was still getting worse. I laid down on my bed and I said, you know what, I'm going to try out this optimal EFT thing. And I just said, dear God, please remove from my subconscious mind whatever beliefs I am holding on to that is contributing to this cold, to this illness, to this belief that I am vulnerable to illness. And I am not exaggerating when I say in that very moment I felt better. I immediately felt the illness sort of like decrease in intensity by a significant amount, and that was like a night. I did that before I went to bed, and the next morning I was already getting better from the cold. And it was crazy because I actually, when I did that, when I asked God for help to remove the beliefs that were contributing to the problem, it's literally, I felt the change within me right then. And actually about, like maybe a year later, maybe not a year later, maybe it was 6 or 8 months later, something, a long time later, I got sick again, many months later, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do this again. And I said, dear God, please remove from me the beliefs in my subconscious mind that are contributing to this illness and to this idea that I am vulnerable to this illness. Because, if you have a belief in your head that you're vulnerable to illness, then you will be vulnerable to illness because your body does what your mind believes. So, and again, it started getting better in that night. Started feeling better, and the next day it was already getting better. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about in this video. I really cover the method I used in my alphabet calibration videos, but I know that that's not for everyone. Not everyone can do the consciousness calibration method that I talk about. So these are the techniques that I recommend for mania and depression, and for honestly any mental problem and even physical illnesses. If you can't do the calibration I talk about in my previous videos, I recommend the Sedona Method, what's called the welcoming technique. You just welcome the negative feelings that come up about your problem until the feelings all run out. And that's what happens, they run out. And then I also recommend optimal EFT, where basically you pray to God or a higher power of some sort, and you ask the higher power to help you out and to remove from you that mental aspect which is contributing to your problem. And so yeah, that's what I would recommend. And if you want to watch my prior videos about other topics, you can do that. But I just wanted to make this video to let people know that are searching on YouTube for bipolar mania and depression that I thought that my mania and my depression were genetic. I thought they were permanent conditions. But as a result of inner mental and spiritual work, they were cured. They were actually completely cured. Today, I take no medications at all for any problem, and I have no mania and no depression. And yeah, so that's really what I wanted to say in this video, is that there is a way to cure these two issues. I know they're very severe. Depression, I mean, there was a point in my life where I almost killed myself. There was a point for several months where if I literally had like a loaded gun available to me, I probably would have killed myself. There was a point where I was so depressed, I was walking, when I would walk down the street and a bus would drive by, there would be an urge in my head that would say, you should jump in front of this bus. And pretty much the only thing that stopped me is the fear that I would survive and that I would be like in a hospital bed and like disabled for the rest of my life if I didn't die from being hit by a bus. That's how depressed I was. But it was just the depression. It wasn't me. It was just the depression. And yeah, so I know how bad depression is. I know how bad mania is. Um, the mania, I never had a chance to experience just mania by itself because I took meds for my mania and it went away, and then I took meds for my depression and it went away because of the treatment. So I never had just mania alone. It was always mixed with depression. I assumed that mania by itself wouldn't be so bad compared to depression by itself. Depression by itself is still horrible. Mania by itself, I don't know. I'd probably just make lots of stupid decisions while manic. But anyways, I just want to put this video out there for anyone searching on YouTube or around the internet that I am a success story. By doing mental work, spiritual work, whatever you want to call it, I was cured of bipolar mania and depression. Severe mania, ultradian rapid cycling mania. It's like pretty much the most severe mania, and I had very severe suicidal depression. And both of these drastically were impeding my life for pretty much my whole childhood up until I was like 24, 25. Yeah, and so I know what it's like to live with depression and mania. I just wanted to say that with proper inner spiritual work, you can overcome it. And those two techniques are what I would recommend for a beginner. If you're like a serious spiritual student, then you might want to watch my other videos about the other technique that I used. But yeah, I just wanted to put this video out there. So if you have mania or depression or anything else for that matter, I wish you good luck, and I'm sure I'll make more videos about this stuff in the future. So goodbye now.